Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session, Teaching Architecture Concepts and Methods, something near and dear to my heart. My name is Grazia Aquino, and I will be the chair today. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We are going to host a question and answer session toward the end after all three presenters. And right now we only have two presenters, but after all three presenters have completed their session, okay? So hold your questions until the very end. I would like to introduce Grant Hamming, and Grant's presentation is on interdisciplinary peer-to-peer learning in design and policy, Rhizome at Virginia Tech. So welcome, Grant.
Look at me, I put the wrong title on here. Good start.
Different ones. So.
No, it's my fault.
Awesome.
Also, I'll apologize at the beginning. I have a bit of congestion, so hopefully my voice doesn't fail me or anything, but we'll see how it goes. So the Rhizome Living Learning Community, or LLC, is one of 21 such communities at Virginia Tech. I actually just heard that we're growing to 24 of them next year. Founded in 2021, it's part of an ongoing effort by the university to expand both the number of such programs in which students live together while engaging with programming around a curricular and/or co-curricular theme, as well as the number of on-campus students enrolled in LLCs in general, with a goal of around 2/3 of the 10,000 students living on campus enrolled in one by next year. I don't think they're going to make it. It's part of the Creativity and Innovation District, LLP, a new residence hall designed to anchor the similarly named Creativity and Innovation District, an effort to remake the east side of Virginia Tech's campus, which abuts the historic downtown of the town of Blacksburg, to focus on the interdisciplinary intersections of the arts, design, and technology. The CID LLP, which stands for Living Learning Program, so Rhizome is a living learning community inside of a living learning program. Yes, I'm as confused as you are. Is a collaboration amongst the College of Architecture, Arts, and Design, the Institute for Creativity in the Arts and Technology, the Division of Student Affairs, and University Athletics. It offers a unique blend of spaces and amenities, including traditional dorm rooms, suites for first-year student athletes, studio and performing arts classrooms, and apartments for live-in faculty and student affairs staff, as well as for visiting scholars. The crown jewel of the facility is a state-of-the-art maker studio that includes a wood shop, metal shop, laser cutters, and 3D printers. And you can see the kind of designer's rendering of that space in the background in this rendered drawing here. Living learning programs at Tech are organized based on the pyramid model formulated by Karen Kurat-Sochi Inkelis and her collaborators in Living Learning Communities That Work, a research-based model for design, delivery, and assessment. In this model, the foundations are both conceptual, a need for clear goals and objectives, and infrastructural, meaning facilities, faculty, staff, and other resources. And built upon those foundations are an academic environment encompassing courses for credit, faculty advising, and intentionality around supporting student learning. The next layer up is a co-curricular environment that supports the academic goals of the program. And the pinnacle is a concept known as intentional integration, meaning that all aspects are working in harmony towards the program's goals. The mortar holding the pyramid together is assessment, which helps keep individual components of the program running optimally, as well as ensuring that cohesion, that aforesaid intentional integration, occurs. As with many, though not all LLCs at Tech, Rhizome is a partnership between academic affairs, specifically the College of Architecture, Arts, and Design, AAD, and student affairs. Its physical infrastructure and resources are centered in the CID dorm, with the majority of funding coming from student program fees. Supplemental funding to support the curriculum is provided by AAD, with additional facilities available in the college's academic buildings elsewhere on campus. Rhizome's program director, which is me, is appointed as a faculty member on Virginia Tech's collegiate track, which is a non-tenure track appointment that kind of features long-term renewable contracts and the possibility of promotion, and is geared towards specialists in teaching rather than research, Virginia Tech being a R1 highest level of research institution. So I'm responsible for both the curricular programming, which is the classes that I teach for Rhizome, and co-curricular learning, as well as throwing pizza parties, which is my least favorite part of the job, but I haven't started drinking yet, so I shouldn't get started. Though the model insists on the inseparability of curricular and co-curricular aspects, I'm mostly going to focus on the curricular portions of these programming, primarily due to time, and also because I struggle with them less than I do the co-curricular, and that's something I'm happy to talk about more in Q&A or informally, because it's an important part of the model that's the most difficult part, I think. So featuring an interdisciplinary, multi-generational, which at Tech means not just freshmen, but also students in second, third, and fourth years, mix of curricular and co-curricular experiences, Rhizome aims to help undergraduate students gain the skills and perspectives to tackle complex global challenges through a combination of design thinking, systems thinking, sustainable development, and project-based learning. Yearly learning is centered on one of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and approaches a complex global challenge from both global and local perspectives. The culmination of the year is a sustained and iterative project in collaboration with a community partner or partners, offering design-based solutions to one or more problems faced by that partner. So first-year students are doing design work for local clients. So in our first year, which was last academic year, the theme was food insecurity and sustainable agriculture. And this year, we were working with a focus on sustainable cities and communities. So this paper reflects on these first 2 years of Rhizome, in particular on the challenges and possibilities represented by Rhizome's unique blended emphasis on policy and design interventions. How do design and engineering students, who make up the bulk of the students in the program, understand their relationships to policy? How do students in the humanities and sciences contribute to design projects? How does peer-to-peer learning, specifically organization into interdisciplinary design teams, impact students' understanding of their roles in addressing complex global challenges? By starting to answer these and related questions, I hope to offer some guidance and possibilities if anyone is interested in similar sorts of programs back home. So, though it now resides with a college called Architecture, Arts, and Design, encompassing the schools of architecture, design, visual arts, and performing arts, Rhizome was planned as part of the College of Architecture and Urban Studies, or CAUS, consisting of the schools of architecture plus design, policy and international affairs, or SPIA, building construction, and visual arts, which is SOVA. The old CAUS was conceived as studying and designing the built environment from the interior out through the individual building to the street, neighborhood, and ultimately the urban agglomeration. Notice that the Poor School of Visual Arts doesn't really figure into this conceptual matrix. So one of the contradictions we were working under. But pretty much right after Rhizome was founded, there was a big divorce, and the college was reorganized with SPIA, the policy arm, going to a different college, and building construction going to engineering. The School of Architecture and Design had its own mini divorce. They couldn't get along, so now there are two separate schools. And not to air all of our dirty laundry here, but we also absorbed the School of Performing Arts. So now we're a more traditional College of Arts and Design. But we also have a living learning program that's supposed to teach about policy and building construction. So I had a decision to make, and I decided to stick with the original orientation of the program, mostly because I just went through curricular governance to like teach this, and it seemed silly to abandon it all again, just because my colleagues were moving themselves around. But I also have a goal to integrate concepts from the performing arts, which is like, actually, I just learned about that during the last session, so that'll be really useful, but it's been slow going so far. So anyway, I started in my role as the inaugural program director for Rhizome in July of 2021, just in time for the program's launch the following month. So someone else planned it, I executed it. This compressed timeline, as well as the fact that pandemic-era construction delays meant that the CID building was coming online even as students were moving in. Like literally, there were open electrical closets with live wires while students and their parents are like toting, beanbag chairs into the dorm. So it was really chaotic. It was another key challenge. Also, my wife and I welcomed a baby in September. So anyway, so following Inkelis's best practices model, we launched with a mix of curricular and co-curricular activities designed to support student learning around the inaugural theme, which, as I said, was SDG 2, Zero Hunger. The initial Rhizome cohort consisted of 50 first-year students, so right away, not intergenerational, about 2/3 of whom came from architecture, design, and policy majors, with the rest represented by engineering and a grab bag of science disciplines. Due to the compressed timeline of onboarding and program launch, the class wasn't offered until spring semester. Instead, students were graded with an ambitious co-curricular program that included service learning trips, guest faculty lectures, and workshops on community work and social justice. A chaotic schedule based on facilitator availability meant that students were frequently unaware of the program's weekly schedule. When they did come to events, they were often overwhelmed by the seriousness and intensity of the subject matter, which was pitched at a level more appropriate for students further along in their studies, or at career academics, who after all were the ones who put together the program. According to the pyramid model, co-curricular elements rest atop academic ones, reinforcing classroom work by giving students the opportunity to apply it outside of the classroom. By launching its co-curricular programming first, out of necessity, Rhizome offered these sorts of experiences without the benefit of the formalized classroom study, leaving students kind of adrift as they navigated these complex challenges. So also, many of the co-curricular experiences were strikingly academic, better suited to the classroom setting, and I have only carrots outside the classroom, no sticks. So quickly students realized they didn't have to come to these. They wanted to be like having fun in the dorm, not doing more class after a full day of class, especially if they're in studio for 12 hours a week. So anyway, so if you were to go about that yourself, you should focus early on cohort building, curricular offerings, and start trying to like bait and switch them with the meatier stuff later on in the year. That would be my recommendation. So I first taught the course as a special study, which is like in our governance process, a way you can teach a course without committing to teaching it in that way, but you're only allowed to do that twice before you have to kind of like stick to something. It started up in the spring of 2022 semester, and so a lot of the students didn't know each other yet. This has to do with building geography, with the chaotic schedule, but also I think courses help students get to know each other. A bigger issue was that the complex mix of disciplinary inputs in Rhizome made for an overstuffed class experience. In one 16-week semester, students were asked to learn about systems thinking, sustainable development, primarily the SDGs, design thinking, and human-centered design. They were then asked to complete original design-based projects in service of a community partner. In this case, Plenty, a farm and community food organization in Floyd County, which is a rural area about 45 minutes south of Tech's campus. The first half of the semester moved discreetly through the more academic topics, asking students to read, discuss, and apply concepts from books and scholarly articles about systems thinking, sustainable development, design history, and theory. So then the switch to practical design work in interdisciplinary project teams in week 9 of the semester was, after this book-based academic course of study, pretty jarring. It also exposed a key flaw in the one-semester model. Design thinking, as it originated at the D School, is an intensely iterative process involving initial client community input, prototyping, feedback, redesign, further feedback, and so on until a satisfactory conclusion is reached or isn't. Simply put, even a basic version of this process was impossible to execute in just the second half of the semester, in like 7 or 8 weeks. This was exacerbated by the fact, and this, I should say, I have a PhD in art history, so I'm also not a design practitioner. So there's a whole new layer of stuff that I've learned. So my architecture and design students are in foundations the first year. They're not even doing design work in studio. They're learning to draw and think like designers. So the non-design students were even less likely to have this sort of experience. So basically, students needed more support and more time to like have a go at this. But I should say, my students are awesome. Even in this constrained environment, their work revealed the strong potential for project-based learning inherent in the model. Plenty, our partner for the year, distributes both donated food and produce grown on site to anyone living in Floyd County who identifies as food insecure, which means, according to the US federal government, that they can't qualify for all the money that they give to people because there has to be means testing in the United States. Love it. So we had originally encountered Plenty as part of a service learning trip in October 2021. And it's running its operations out of a small former farmhouse and outbuildings. You can see here, this is the kitchen of the farmhouse, diverted food waste here, turnips that we picked being washed and boxed here, and then they're basically splitting up seed garlic here in a greenhouse. Plenty's leadership were concerned about the county's relatively low rates of vaccination for COVID-19. The 1-dose rate to this day is hovering around 50%. The 2-dose rate lower. The like fully bivalent booster rate is very low. I don't even think they're actually measuring it. And the impact of indoor food distribution on its clients, many of whom are elderly or otherwise at heightened risk of the disease from the diseases of poverty primarily. Thus, students were asked to submit ideas for a variety of efforts to move more of Plenty's operations outdoors, including waiting areas, new food distribution areas, demonstration gardens for locally grown produce, wayfinding and signage, and a new facility for washing the produce crates. An examination of student work shows a serious approach to the topic. For example, a group called itself Plenty, or Please Let Everyone Nourish Their Youth, decided to focus on the crate washing station. They conceived of an enclosed or semi-enclosed space with large sinks, ample drying racks, and a floor drain to ensure that standing water would not be a concern. In particular, they included an accessible sink to accommodate volunteers or employees who might use wheelchairs. Their design stemmed directly from their goals, which included accessibility, aesthetics, manageability, practicality, and usability. These last three, overlapping though they may be, show the group's cognizance that this is not the appropriate time for the architect or designer's flights of fancy. Rather, they have absorbed one of the key goals of the program, which is for students to grasp that in seeking to improve people's lives, they should trust those people to know what they need and help them achieve it, rather than to impose top-down hierarchical solutions. The Virginia Tech Trekkers, the only group to have a member actually visit Plenty during the time when they were working on their project, focused on an outdoor waiting area for those visiting the food pantry. Their design reflects that visit, exhibiting a site specificity lacking in the groups that relied on photographs and other indirect observations. Designed as an addition to an extant outbuilding, their waiting area is designed to cover a low-lying swale, currently an underutilized dead zone in the middle of the Plenty campus. Featuring low walls that can double as seating, the design also includes an armature to support a retractable fabric shade to provide shelter from both rain and sun. As with Plenty, these students made accessibility a cornerstone of their design, at first considering ramps at the entrances before deciding to just take advantage of the fact that they're filling in this ditch and just going directly sort of at grade. So an examination of other groups reveals a similar set of strengths. Students thought seriously about the problems as conveyed to them by Plenty staff, and they were careful to create realistic designs. Each of the designs, with the possible exception of a planter design repurposing old shipping pallets, would need additional attention from professional architects to be realized. Still, that is likely to be true of most designs created by first-year students. So, I think it was pretty successful for a first try. So going into year two, the biggest areas for improvement seem clear. Better integrate the course into the rhythms of life in the LLC. Separate the academic and hands-on sections of the course. Give more time for iteration and design work, and improve the interdisciplinary aspects of the program. A single solution easily presented itself for the first three problems, which was to split the course. So during the fall, students in Rhizome now take AAD 1204, Thinking Globally, and this is where they learn systems thinking and design thinking. It's built around collaborative research skills, so getting them used to group work and also identifying people they can't work well with together. Meanwhile, this also gives me time to run around like crazy looking for partners willing to take on all this work with my students. And then we visited the sites too. This is one of the sites we worked at. And in January, by the start of AAD 1214, acting locally, students have become accustomed to a weekly LLC class. They're familiar with each other's group work styles and have already achieved a basic level of familiarity with the projects on which they'll work. That familiarity was reinforced at the beginning of the semester with presentations from the clients, which in this case included Habitat for Humanity, a local housing nonprofit called Community Housing Partners, and the town of Blacksburg. Representatives of these groups walked the students through the projects, which revolved around two housing developments, one of which is a townhouse development in an existing neighborhood, this one, and then the other is like completely new construction. They're basically leveling a mountaintop on the outskirts of town to put around 60 units up there. Working in 13 different teams, students have been engaged in a diverse array of projects, including both digital and physical 3D modeling, site planning, recommendations on architectural language, house orientation recommendations for solar and passive heating, and more. The students were asked to perform preliminary research on their chosen projects, building knowledge that would ideally help them as they began their design work. They also performed group work exercises in order to help ensure that they worked well together. After these initial weeks of research and group formation, students embarked on a modified version of a charrette. While most commonly used to mean an intensive collaboration between a community and design professionals, the charrette format was modified in this case to enable first-year students working with faculty guidance to quickly complete initial prototypes of their designs. These form the basis of further iteration over the remaining weeks of the semester, 12 or so. In the interest of time, I'm just going to highlight one of the groups, an interdisciplinary team made up of students majoring in architecture, engineering, water science, data analytics, and urban planning. The unimaginably named Nate's team benefited from the mentorship of a senior member of the architecture faculty. And they have been among the most successful teams, showing the possibilities of this sort of interdisciplinary and collaborative work for first-year students. After the charrette, they came up with these plans for fitting 11 townhouses, plus parking and communal space on a 0.8 acre parcel of land. Their faculty mentor and I offered feedback on these preliminary plans, after which they chose to focus their orientation this way. They chose it in order to maximize the amount of communal space, hoping to avoid making lower income inhabitants feel as if they are simply being warehoused. They also chose this orientation to increase the appeal to the rest of the neighborhood, a tightly knit enclave of mid-century ranch houses, primarily by minimizing the profile from Airport Road, the area's main thoroughfare. They presented this version of the project to the clients, including the executive director of Habitat and the local chapter and the representatives of the town, as well as faculty mentors. They were mostly complimentary. After all, who's going to be mean to freshmen? But they raised two major objectives. The first was related to the cost of this ring road, saying that it would be too much asphalt. And the other was more technical, and it has to do with the stormwater kind of naturally flows through this portion of the site. So I told them to just say, well, that's an engineering problem that you can figure out. But the students actually thought about it. So this is their final design. It minimizes the impact of the stormwater issue, while also providing greater access via footpath to an adjacent micropark, another project. Importantly, the students have stuck to their guns on the ring road, viewing it as essential to the success of their design. Nate's team shows the power of this sort of project for first-year students. They've experienced something of the iterative design project, prototyping, revising, responding to feedback, and otherwise gaining perspective on what their future lives as experts might hold. The last day of classes is next week, so I've not yet had a chance to receive formal student feedback. In informal conversations with these and other students, however, I think that they seem excited by their participation in these sort of complex problems. Though they might or might not see this experience as directly relevant to their intended majors, they have gained a variety of broadly transferable skills, including teamwork, interdisciplinary collaboration, working with adult experts outside of their usual academic orbits, and absorbing and responding to feedback related to real-world requirements and conditions. And so, as I said, Nate's team is kind of the exemplary group from this semester, but I also think the other teams engaged in similar practices, and I believe have gained similarly in perspectives. This type of teaching is, I should say, immensely time-intensive due to the need to recruit and manage community partners, faculty mentors, and student groups, but it's really rewarding to see the students gain so much in such a short amount of time. Thanks.
Thank you, Grant. That was an incredible presentation. I have lots of questions, but we'll hold them until the end. And I'd like to welcome Anna for our second presentation. In the meantime, I'd like to ask, is Thomas here by chance? Has Thomas arrived? No. Okay. So Ana Luisa Rodriguez, she will be sharing with us changing the ways of teaching architecture to prevent placelessness architecture type by our copy and paste generation. So this is awesome. Thank you, Anna.
I'm just going to get you to there.
Yes.
Okay. You want to try the forward and back to make sure it works okay?
Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
Hi, I'm sorry. I came from Portugal. I'm tired. My body said it's almost midnight, so I prefer to sit down if you don't mind. My Portuguese it's not as good, and not my voice anymore, but I'll do my best. So here I am to present changing the ways of teaching architecture to prevent placelessness architecture type in our copy-paste generation. I'm also an architect and I teach for almost 30 years already, for 3 decades. So here I am after all this time. So concerning teaching architecture, on one hand, we have the pedagogies and the other practice. So we have to pay attention to its methodologies and its results. So the available technologies we have already, and on the other hand, the question of globalization. So it brings us, in a way, it comes to simplify process and gives us lots of information. So there is impossible to avoid this copy-paste generation we have now of our students. So the issue here is the problem of influence, and that in a way it leads to some kind of lack of originality and also lack of character. So the newness, it's here at stake, and of course, in the other hand, the sameness, it's kind of an issue nowadays. So my goal, my challenge as a teacher is to somehow to increase, for one hand, the creativity, and the other, the identity. So I guess we have to rethink our methodologic pedagogies and to read again the results of our practice in order to find some solutions. So first of all, it's easy to admit that the modus operandi of doing architecture is universal. So let's talk about the creative process. And that's the problem. In a way, we all start with just a blank page, nothing but a blank page. Then suddenly an idea emerges. For instance, we can have a spot and we can have a glass box and a tree. So we can have an idea, glass house in the landscape. A glass house in a landscape can be a good idea, like Mies van der Rohe's back in 1951 with Farnsworth's house. So the question is, we have the idea, but then we need to fix the idea to transform it into something real. Then we need to use some tools and apply methodologies to proceed with its conception, its design. The house has to be settled in the right place and to be built properly. For that, we have to choose among a huge range of options. And this became a massive problem of our contemporaneity, what choose to make. In fact, somehow you get lost in a notion of concepts, parameters, features, issues, from shape to scale to proportion, style, size, lots and lots of things you have to pay attention to take care, and it all can be a theme: layers, identity, diversity. Even the 4 seasons has to be something that we have to pay attention. So this problem of influence, in fact, it's a huge problem. Everything is about the same everywhere. We're producing buildings that can be placed anywhere. In other words, this global sameness shapes globalization. What is at stake here, it's the question of identity and character of today's architecture. What is done today worldwide is available online in a blink of an eye. Everything is just at the distance of a click or a simple touch on the screen. The problem of dissemination and contagious per second, it's unbelievable. So influence is inevitable. In a way, all over the world, from a distance in the big scale like a city, it all looks the same, from Beijing to Tokyo, from London to Toronto, from New York to São Paulo. And even in the small scale like this little house, we can see it spread all over the world, from Japan to Denmark, Norway, and it all came from the same idea, Farnsworth's house from Mies van der Rohe. So how can we avoid sliding into such places architecture type? We can, let's go back in time and take a look at Le Corbusier. 100 years ago, he wrote, "In my pocket was the plan of a house, a plan without a site, A plan of house in the search of a plot of ground? Yes. With the plan in our pocket, we spent a long time looking for a site. After considering several, one day we discovered the right one from the top of the hill. It was on the lakeside and might be said to have been waiting specially for this little house. In fact, Le Corbusier had a purpose. This little house will shelter my father and mother in their old age after a life of hard work. Then he had an idea to build a dwelling machine that would fit like a glove to his parents. So the concept, he points out, the architectural feature implied in this simple solution of 1923, a period when the search of a suitable form of house was not a question which exercised people's mind very much. So he drew it, the perfect plan with the perfect view, and everything was settled perfectly. Ironically wrote, he points out the crime. When this little house had been completed back in 1924, and my father and mother were able to move in, the municipal council of a neighboring commune met to decide that a building of this kind constituted a crime against nature, fearing lest it might nevertheless give rise to competition. Who knows? They forbade it ever to be imitated. As a matter of fact, this simple solution within this suitable form of house must have been imitated thousands of times without being a crime. Somehow it became our ordinary plan of today because it was a good idea. So in a copy-paste generation like ours, how can we stimulate the original creative process in a student? Moreover, as we heard before in the same room, when AI is already available, which came to facilitate even more the thinking process, how powerful or risky this tool can turn to be in the hand of a student. So let's take GPT as an example. Dr. Jess Toll said ChatGPT is not giving us any new information about the need to modernize higher education, but it's probably taking away the delusion that those changes are still optional. Indeed, ChatGPT is a fantastic guide on the site, eliminating current gaps. So we are now is more needing to focus on building strong relationships, like mentoring relationships and professional relationships with learners, providing them with access to viable networks and viable resources that they can only access within the academic institution. We need to wonder where the value in higher education lies at this point. So what has to change methodologically from the educational point of view? After, as I said, almost 3 decades later, I decided to change the approach of my the exercise I used to do back in Portugal, and the mode now is give them the right tools. I mean, I decided my challenge is to formalize a disruptive way of thinking, knowing that the most difficult thing is to unlearn. So need to push them to restart again from the beginning by focusing on the thinking process. They need to disrupt the usual patterns. They need to blur the bias and refresh the knowledge. And they need to learn how to rethink differently. So my experience, this is a class of, it's already a master degree. So they already learned the first 3 years the fundamentals and the basis of the modus operandi of doing architecture. So now this is a class of architectural design, which the main theme is residential architecture. I name it Modes and Models of Inhabiting, and the program aims to design a singular house as a practice exercise. I divided in 3 acts, and the first act I gave them time to unravel the house. I mean, to undo and decode the house, to deepen the understanding of its elements and relationships, from the identification of form to its functions. They reveal and clarify each action and each space within the scope of a daily experience. We are talking about houses, so everybody knows how to live in, so we need to learn, we just need to think about it. And then they identify it all through the filters of our 5 senses: vision, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. This is the difference. And then in the second act, they select the place, they learn everything about it. And at last, they choose a concept to feed the idea and to nurture the purpose of the house, as well as to spur creativity. So the exercise will be different with this concept they choose. They choose lots, and whatever they want, for instance, silence or loneliness, as they wish, they choose the concept. So we start my classes, I focus on this kind of relations, the sensory receptors. So how does it interfere with architecture of the house? They start to think about things in a different way, in a slower way. For instance, if we are talking about vision, for instance, of course, we have to talk about light. So how can light be a matter or material to architecture? We learn to see in a different way. I push them to use words to describe how can we see light, for instance, if we are talking about vision, because vision is a distant sense. It's not, we don't touch. So we can use illusion also to relate vision to the ways of doing architecture. But for instance, light can be as the light that reflects, the light that lurks, that defines, that points, that conducts, that curves, that announces, checks, that indicates, that abounds, hides, or discovers, or codes, or goes down. The light that scratches, the light that sketches, the light that decorates, that outlines, that contrasts, and so on, so on. For instance, if we talk about tact, all the senses, including vision, are extension of tactile sense. Even the vision reveals what touch already knows. So when we look at something, for instance, when we look at a picture, we have to understand there is 2 kinds of visual touch and physical touch. And we can read it from the texture point of view, for instance, if it's soft or tough, or from the temperature, if it's warm or cold, or the pain, because at home we have our naked body, we have our barefoot, we have to think about it. When we do this, yeah, it makes noise, and all the things are different. So we have to think about it in a specific way, not just as a material we need to choose from the constructor, but we need to feel about it. If it hurts, if it's stuck, everything about it. So we need to learn and to see in a different way this tactile sensation, for instance. Every material we have to choose differently, not just because we need it, but because we want to make the difference. So even the floor and every material has to be thinking in a different way, in a slower way, in a way that makes you feel something. So we have to learn to read things, like, for instance, like this touch reading. Sometimes it looks like cozy, but it's not. It's a rock, it's a stone, or it's wood. So we have to read it in a different way, because it's beautiful to see. But for instance, it's not good, the feeling, it's not good. Oh, the other one. I'm tired. For instance, this stairs, they are beautiful, but if they are next to the pool, you have to pay attention. How does it hurt with your barefoot? It's not wrong or right. You can choose. If I want, I can choose it to make me feel alive. So I want it to be kind of a pain, but we have to understand that this kind of difference make the difference, and ChatGPT doesn't know the difference because it doesn't feel. So unravel the house means to forget these names that we used to call things, like a living room, kitchen, bathroom, terrace, whatever. We need to think about the space at home where we relax, eat, sleep, bath, all the actions. Oh, I need to go. And so we have to read it from the senses to explore all the five senses, vision, and in each action we can read all the five senses. We have to understand that it's different. The things that we choose, they are different. For instance, we have this picture, it's a room with a view, but if I had a bed and then a bathtub, is it a bedroom or a bathroom? That's the question. So the kids has to sketch out action by action. They learn everything again, and they modeling space by space, and then they choose a theme to explore, knowing that we are constantly recombining old ideas to make something new. And they need to feel involved. This is my classroom with lots of pictures because they do posters all the time. So in a way, the students are free to use all available means. Of course, ChatGPT, it's also a tool, so they can choose whatever they want. They can use it. However, if they generally embraces the main goal of being original, they struggle to avoid too much contamination, focusing on their own creative process. I swear this is true, because I want to tell, we can do like this, and you want me to do that? And said, no, teacher, it's okay, I can do it. So they wanted to do, because they know that when a good idea emerges, it's really worth fighting for their own identity. So this became the main lesson to retain. And what will be the role of a teacher today? I just brought Kant, from this announcement of the program back in 1765-66, he wrote, "The teacher is expected to develop in a student first the man of understanding, then the man of reason, and finally the man of instruction. Understanding should not learn thoughts, but to think. We must conduct, if we wish to express ourselves in this way, but not carry it on shoulders, so that in the future he will be able to walk by himself without struggling. So we shouldn't give them the fish, but the fishing rod, and teach them how to fish." It was what my dad taught me. So we shouldn't teach them thoughts, but how to think properly. We should make them feel involved in the process, thought through a one-to-one relation between the students and the teacher. And I think this is really, really important. Otherwise, it will carry on doing what they shouldn't. So to avoid this detachment of reality, we should make them realize how amazing it is to create something that arises as a result of a truly genuine thinking process. And we should make them fall in love with architecture. Without this, we can't do anything new. So we should encourage them to yearn the newness and to be committed to originality, striving to build a better world. I'm so tired.
So fantastic.
For me, it's like my father's saying,
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. That was very enlightening.